Blessings and best wishes. Reggie Hubbard here, episode 4 of Practice Makes Purpose, candid conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion, or as one of my Dharma sisters in my Buddhist practice says, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, so Jedi. So, when we have these conversations about wellness, especially in the context of spreading the conversation to all walks of life, you got to kind of be Jedi with it, right? Like there are people who say they woke, but just because you sleep lightly doesn't mean that you woke, right? So let's just make that 100. But I'm super excited today to welcome my homeboy Danny Fluker from Black Boys Om, of a syndicate of which I'm a member, not a syndicate, like a collective of which I'm a member, and just delighted to be able to showcase him and his good work. Black Boys Om is a partner of Om Practice who I'm delighted to be doing this series with for the next couple of weeks, right? So if you missed the past several, we've had Sister Chanel Sledge, black sister from Atlanta, Georgia, or DeKalb County. Pardon me, don't want to confuse DeKalb and Atlanta. I know people get tricky down there in Georgia about that, but Sister Chanel talked about making the practice more accessible to all people. We had Nicholas De Alejo from Men Care Now talking about how we make the practice more accessible for men. And last week we had Brother Mike Huggins from the Transformation Yoga Project talking about how we make these practices accessible to incarcerated populations and veteran populations, and instead of being so woo-woo and less approachable, make yoga a functional tool as well as sacred art, because it's that synthesis that allows us to do good work for all people. So Danny, request to be on and we'll get you on, and then we'll get this conversation cracking. But just excited to be here. Thank you for those who are here now live, and for those who will view this later whenever we do it, or whenever you see it.
Hey, brother. Peace to you. Peace, bro.
And blessings to you. They said it couldn't happen. They were wrong.
I'm so glad to be here, brother. Thank you.
Absolutely. So delighted to be here. You got a little sun kiss going on, man. Where's this? You been out in the sun? What's the deal?
I have, yeah. Thank you. I've been like in different warm places. I've been traveling to different places as an intentional nomad, and so all the places I've been so far have been like in the sun. Yeah.
And I mean, you've been to Big Sur, or you've been to
Mhm.
California. So tell us more about the intentional nomad, man. Like, we're not talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the pandemic, I'm pretty sure not just me, but it stirred up a bit of wanderlust, and I had never traveled. I've always like worked, and I always told myself, "Oh, one day I'll travel, one day I'll travel," and like live out of a duffel bag. Like I always dreamed about that, but I never did it. And so January 1st came this year. I left my home city of Atlanta. I had a duffel bag, and I haven't been back, since. And like, thank you. Yeah, it's just, and I cut off like all of like my expenses, so like I don't have like a place that I'm renting or anything like that. I don't have a lot of bills, so it's just like literally just enough to like find a place to lay my head and eat. And like I'll go to like different places. So I've been to Jamaica and Costa Rica and Puerto Rico, and I've connected with actually different brothers in the collective in different places.
Oh, that's what's
Yeah, I was able to teach in Big Sur recently. I was teaching yoga out there for about 5 weeks and trying to get exposure to the nonprofit, to Black Boys Home, and also just being a beautiful place. Like Big Sur is a really beautiful place. I was in Esalen and teaching about 8 classes a week there. And now I'm in Los Angeles just for a little stint. But yeah.
Well, I love that. Like that's beautiful. And what I love about that specifically is that why not do it now, right? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like if yoga teaches us anything, it teaches us, well, several things. The most important are union, so we're all in this together, and
Yes.
be present, right?
Yes.
Don't
Yes.
go like, I'll do this tomorrow. No, what can you do right now? Like,
Yeah.
not only make life beautiful, but to make an impact in life. So thank you for that story.
Yeah.
You've seen or heard me do these things. So, I'll pull
Mm.
stuff out of you. You may be, but I'm gonna pull some shine out, especially when you were sun kissed and like black lipstick.
I appreciate it. Thank you, brother.
So So tell me a little bit more about your yoga journey, right? So how did you find the practice? Like, when did you start
Mhm.
practicing? When did you start teaching? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I discovered yoga as a way to mitigate um, ongoing anxiety and deep sadness. There was a point in my life where I had anxiety to the point that my breath was constricted. I was holding my breath and had to remind myself to breathe. And there were long periods of time where I wouldn't breathe throughout certain periods throughout the day, and I would have to like remind myself, oh, I need to intentionally breathe. And so I connected with a Chinese herbalist, and at the recommendation of a friend, and we sat down, and she gave me some herbal teas, and she did some energy work for me. And at the end, she recommended I take yoga, and I remember thinking, okay, this is something that I know about, but it's kind of it's not within my like periphery. I'm not familiar with it.
Word.
And she like gave me this recommendation. I kind of put it on the back burner. I didn't pursue it, and it wasn't until months later that I was walking and I saw a bunch of people doing yoga in the park. There was like hundreds of people doing yoga in this open field sponsored by King of Pops here there in Atlanta. And I remember just was like, man, like these people are like moving and like people from all walks of life. And so I didn't have a mat or anything. I just went out there in the grass and tried to mimic what they were doing. I had
Word.
done
Oh,
yeah, I had done martial arts as a young man, like when I was really young, and I was thought maybe okay, might be similar. So I tried to mimic what they were doing, and I realized when I was doing it that I was breathing better, and I
oh,
kind of got
word.
hooked from there. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was when, like, what year was that?
Oh gosh. Maybe I want to say it's 2015. I want to say it's 2015. So
Not
not
that it
not too
matters.
long ago. Yeah, yeah. I'm pretty sure it's either 2015 and 2016.
I mentioned that because I'm a relatively new practitioner as well, and so like for those
Yeah.
people that practice, like it don't take long before this thing takes over, right? You know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
blessings. So like shout out to Monica and shout out to the Flowing Lotus sister. Lovely, good to see you, my sister in sound. So happy to have you on the show. Tell us about, so how did Black Boys Own come into existence, right? So 2015, you're mimicking people in a
Mhm.
field. Then when did the impetus come for you and brother Brandon to start Black Boys Own?
Yeah. So from that park session I was doing and mimicking, I wanted to join a studio, and I like Googled yoga studio, and this yoga studio came up, and I went to their website, and they were like, there's a black man teaching at that studio. And I remember like immediately going to his class because I saw myself in him, and I became part of that studio. And that studio was like became my community, and I ended up doing my teacher training there, and becoming an instructor a few years later. And when I this particular yoga studio was a corporate yoga studio, and I remember thinking, when I become a teacher, I want to make sure that I'm teaching in the community, like my communities. And so I connected with a Black-owned yoga studio in Atlanta, Yellow Mat Wellness, which is what it's called now, and it's owned by Sia Collins, and she hired me. She was my the first studio that actually brought me on as a teacher. And I remember she was like, I have this meditation workshop coming up. It's going to be called Men Who Meditate. And I would love to have you teach the asana portion of it. She's a huge meditation practitioner, meditation teacher, specifically Vipassana. And so I was like, yeah, I'll do it, you know? And so we hold this space for called Men Who Meditate. And all the men who showed up that day were Black, and it was just happened to be that way. Yeah. And so like I'm leading the asana portion that ends. She is leading the meditation workshop, and at one point sunlight is pouring into the room. There's complete stillness and silence, and like we're a room full of Black men meditating. And I remember realizing like I've never experienced this, and
That's
I had this like aha moment that
yeah.
would became the seed that would eventually become Black Boys Own. And my one of my yoga mentors at the time was Brandon Copeland, and he was a really major yoga teacher in Washington, D.C. He would travel down to Atlanta to give trap yoga classes. And I remember like living for those classes, and whenever he would come, you know, and being
Yeah.
really happy and excited about it, and like connecting with him, and like, are you going to do a teacher training, and like asking him all these questions. And I also noticed his work, like he was doing work with Black boys in Southeast DC. And
Yeah.
so like, you know, that yoga teacher, yoga student relationship between us became like a friendship, became a mentorship. And also I began to have conversations with him and Sia both about what would eventually become Black Boys Own, what it would look like, you know, how to replicate, you know, the men who meditate, how to replicate this, what Brennan was doing and for Black boys in Southeast DC. And that just those were the seeds that laid the groundwork to eventually become what Black Boys Own
Yes.
is
For
now.
those who don't know who we are, give us the
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
what is Black Boys Home, who are we, and why do we
Mhm.
matter, and what are we doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Black Boys Own is a grassroots community organization turned nonprofit, and we exist to serve the well-beings of Black boys and Black men through mindfulness, meditation, and yoga. We have a network that is now 300 Black men who are Black male wellness practitioners. So there may be a yoga instructor, a meditation teacher, and a social worker, or a math teacher and a yoga teacher. But one thing that we all have in common is that we're in Black male embodiment, and we have these wellness practices for ourselves, and we desire to serve in our communities. And so our focus is to have offerings in containers of education so that other Black boys and Black men, no matter their age, can explore these wellness modalities for themselves, so that we can change the narrative around what wellness accessibility looks like in our communities. We can say that, hey, a Black boy can do yoga or meditate the same way that he could play basketball or football. A Black man can meditate and do yoga the same way that he might run or do a sport to kind of find that stillness within himself. And all these offerings and containers are is not only to educate, but just to allow being, and to do so in a way that is facilitated by other Black men who have these practices for themselves, and they can see themselves in their teacher, and know that there can be a kind of a replication of teacher-student relationships that will spill out into our communities as a whole, so that this can be an integral part of our healing as a community, specifically for those who are descendants of chattel slavery here in America, but also in the Caribbean and across the diaspora as well.
Yeah, so we have people like, I mean, I've seen some chats like brothers in like Vietnam, brothers in
Mhm,
Mozambique, Ghana,
mhm.
DC, Atlanta. Like, where don't we have representation? And
um, it's 97 plus locations right now, and that is where our yogis are. And so we're focusing on specific brothers within those regions to have those offering containers, and we have different outlets. So schools, places of incarceration, community centers, faith organizations, and even in the park sessions that are kind of open space since COVID. And even when COVID happened, there was a shift. Thankful and shout out to Own Practice, because they allowed us to go into a shift of virtual offerings. And we created Black Boys Own Academy in response to COVID, to have a virtual container so that there could be a teacher and a student to see one another and practice together, right? And so those, but yeah, to answer your question, we're all over the United States, the Caribbean, Africa, and the UK. Um, yeah, yeah,
yeah, so
97
talk a little
locations.
more about like the relationship with Own Practice, because it's pretty
Mhm.
special. I mean, I love
Yeah,
practice in general just because like Chris and like Rachel and Sam, they're just the
yeah,
best. But talk a little bit more about the specific relationship between Black Boys Own and Own Practice.
yeah. So I'm very grateful to Chris, who's the owner, creator of Own Practice. He had several meetings with me last year, and I mean, I was trying to rack my brain around what virtual offerings would look like consistently. And he and his team were very helpful in helping us sit down and navigate how to make sure that Black Boys Home Academy was a success. I was like, I had this idea. I want to make sure that there's a virtual container where people, Black boys and Black men and their families, can practice, and they can see the instructor, and the instructors can see them. and I want it to be completely free. I wanted to have you can have a Black Boys Zone membership, but it's free. And I also, and we had received this grant at the time to allow us to be able to pay our instructors to offer these free offerings. And so Chris sat down with me, heard my heart, and we just developed this schedule, and we chose instructors outside and within our network to hold these offerings in this space, in this virtual space. And that first summer, we had over 450 classes, virtual classes, and it was just a real success, and it was very grateful. And it's still ongoing today. There's still weekly classes today. And so, yeah, just shout out to Own Practice and shout out to Chris, for sure.
Beautiful community, beautiful initiative. And I mean, and I want to give a shout out to Chris too, because we, this is a relatively new initiative for them. Like, so to do Instagram lives and those sorts of things. And like, so Chris, you and I love that I could do this to both you and Danny right now. None of y'all like being centers of attention. So thank him and thank you for your vision and your heart and creating opportunities for different aspects of yogic practice to shine. You know what I mean? Asana is very important, but also Sangha is important. Community and conversation is important. Using the mind. So asana is to clear the body to open the mind. And so like with a clear mind, having lucid conversations, that's yoga as well. In fact, that's on the path to enlightenment. Like, you know, I'm not trying to sound like a jackass or whatever, but like when the pandemic hit, I would tell people all those like cute splits on Instagram, like, how's that helping your heart right now?
Wow. Yes.
You know,
Absolutely.
how in adversity, like, you know,
Yeah.
practice
Absolutely.
is a psycho-spiritual discipline. It's not just about physical. So like, shout out to both of y'all for like centering all of that. I want to go back a little bit more to what you said earlier with respect to Black Boys Zone existing to normalize wellness practice for Black men, just as as society has normalized sports for us. And you know what I'm getting ready to say. So I'm going to bring up the situation that happened in the UK, where, you know, they want us to just shut up and dribble or shut up and kick balls, and then like, you know, if they it doesn't matter, we make a mistake, like we're monkeys and all these other things. So do you have any reflections on not only what happened in the UK, but how and why meditation and spiritual practice is so important in light of the ridiculous pressure that Black men feel?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I think about the impact on those brothers, and how, like, just their nervous system, right? Like what that must have been like. I have no idea. And to have shame and ridicule on that scale, and racism, actual racism on that scale. And I think about, my first thought is their nervous system, and how do they have access to practices that will help them in their nervous system, so that they can show up and still thrive despite the bullshit that they're experiencing. And as far as like the actual like industry as a whole, like in sports in general, but that particular incident, it's like, you know, there's a supposed love on the surface of Black culture and Black athletes, and then there's this hatred, this insidious like cancer of disease that is racism, that would just come out at any given moment. And it's like, that's what we saw. Like, you had this love at one point for, you know, athleticism and Black prowess, right? But then what was underneath, the undercurrent came out, and I hate it, and it was sad to see. And my heart goes out to those brothers, and I'm thinking about their nervous systems, and I'm thinking about practices that I hope that they have that can help regulate their nervous system.
Yeah, I love your heart, first of all. So blessings on that thoughtful, beautiful answer. And secondly, you know, in the collective, like I'm kind of the most, right? You know what I mean? So like I'm like politics, and like I'm doing this and then I'm doing this. But part of the reason that I'm out there so much is to show that like and I'm not an athlete, right? So like yoga for me, I started practicing yoga to not curse out my boss. Like, my boss was being hella awful, and I was just like, I could either be angry Black man and tell you and your entire family like blah blah blah, or I can figure out ways to just not be that guy. And
Mm.
so part of the reason that I do things like this, or like all these yoga festivals, or all the things that I do, is
Mm.
to show that we as Black men can do conversation. We can
Absolutely.
do headlining yoga festivals. We can
Hmm.
do like lead impeachment strategy. We can do all of those things and not necessarily, be fetishized for being
Hmm.
athletics and then demonized when we don't live up to this imperfect nature of perfection that like the master culture imposes on us.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So tell me two things, and because the other thing about my shows is is I like to keep it tight. Like people got mad short attention spans, so I want to. Then,
Okay.
um, so what are you
Mm.
most excited by in your life? And then we'll talk about the
Mm.
organization, because one of the things I love about you, but almost to a
Mm.
fault, is that you're hella selfless. So love, what's excited? What are you most excited about in your life right now?
I'm doing a lot of inner healing work. There's so much that I'm working through internally, and it's like it's always been that way, but the awareness is even heightened now. I'm finding more um, because I like full disclosure, I have perceptions of lack and thoughts around that, and trying to live in a way that I I tap into the abundance within myself, and then the
Yeah,
abundance that's within the reality, and surrendering to that, and living in a way that kind of shows up to be open to that, and I'm revisiting my self-worth as well. That has been an issue for me for many years, and so I'm just navigating inner healing, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited about continuing to travel. My goal is to, in my travels this year in festival season in West Africa, I want to bring my ancestors home and myself. And I've never been to the continent, and so that is that's something that I'm still trying to manifest as well. And thankfully there are brothers in the collective that are in West Africa and Ghana and Nigeria, that I could connect with, and have a place to lay my head. And so, yeah, travel, healing, a lot of inner work, a lot of continuing to lean on my practice so that I can be grounded, and show up for me the best way that I can.
right. So what are you most excited about with respect to the organization? So what are you most excited about for Black Boys On?
Yeah, I'm very excited about scaling impact, and that is, I don't say that lightly, like literally more impact, more community offerings, more resources for those community offerings. I'm really, our small team, our overhead team has been doing a lot of work to draw in more resources so that we can have more programming. And that is, there are things that are coming around the corner that will enable that, and still there's still work to be done for sure, but I see like the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited about being in more schools, being in more places of incarceration, more community centers and faith organizations, and just making an imprint uh, on our consciousness, and on Black consciousness, and on our culture, and to have that um, be seeds that will last um, multiple generations.
Yeah,
That's I'm excited
love that.
about that. Yeah.
The beautiful thing about it, and I say this a lot, especially on the chat that we're a part of, is that the redemption of Black consciousness, the healing of Black and Brown people, is the redemption of the society and the world,
Mm.
right? So like when we become more whole, when we become more loving, when we become more compassionate towards self, it is in our nature to share that.
Yeah.
So, and I
Absolutely.
can tell you as a teacher, like as I have healed myself, it has allowed me to hold space for tens of thousands of people. But like, I couldn't do that when I was like Reggie, who hated himself and chain
Mm.
smoked and called everyone motherfucker. That I didn't have space for that. But
Right.
as I've done that work and just been able to like live here,
Yeah.
that has allowed me to hold space for members of Congress, brothers,
Yes.
white brothers, black, like everybody.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I love everything that you said because you are tapping into just the, for lack of better terminology, like the wisdom of the universe, right? So like as
Mm.
we heal ourselves, healed people heal people.
Yeah, yeah,
And so
absolutely.
like focusing on your healing and focusing on scaling for the healing of other people only begets more healing.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah,
That's the only way that it could that's the only way that it could work out. So do you have any closing thoughts, like anything on your heart? Well, first of all, before closing thoughts, how can
mm,
people find out more about Black Boys Home? For those of you who are inclined to donate, how can they donate? Like, I grew up in
yeah.
the church. We ask for money, like, you know, especially we ain't gonna be sure
Yes,
about that. So how can people
yeah.
support your work,
Mhm.
or like support your travels or whatever? So how can, so Black Boys Home first, then you.
Yeah, Black Boys Home. Social media is Black Boys Home. It's OM at the end, and this our website is blackboyshome.org, and you can go there and give securely on our website. Please support us. Every little bit helps. We're really out here doing the work, literally. Um, my, for me, if you could just I don't know, it's keep me lifted. Like I'm gonna be okay. I do like speaking engagements. Like and I do teach private yoga sessions as well. Feel free to like reach out to me personally. You can hit my direct messages or go to my website dannyspeakspeace.com. But yeah, like I'm just grateful. Please just support the organization more so than anything. There's so much work that needs to be done.
Do you have any closing thoughts, like as we reach the half hour, like
Yeah.
how how are you experiencing the opening of the world after the pandemic?
Mhm.
What words of wisdom do you have from that beautiful heart that you like don't you don't want to put yourself like,
Yeah.
like a minute and a half,
Uh,
just whatever's on your heart, tell us.
yeah. Know that you are enough, and know that at any moment your breath can bring you home to yourself. Your breath can bring you home to yourself, and you are enough.
Well, brother, like blessings on that wisdom, blessings for this conversation. I can't wait to share this with the group on the text, because like this, I mean, no shade on my homie Jay. You know, Jay and I talk forever, but like I've been waiting for an opportunity to showcase you and your work. So like this is kind of a dream come true for me. I'm super stoked about that. And I'll share a funny story in conclusion. So before
Yeah.
before I do that, next week we have episode 5 with Sister Onika Mays, where we're going to talk about her work as like soul sister in the mindfulness
Mm,
movement, who teaches yoga meditation at Rikers. Like, so we're really going to
yeah.
talk about how like we bring the practice to all people with Sister Onika next week.
Nice.
Yesterday I taught a class for a group of union folks, and they looked over my shoulder and they were like, "Hey man, what's up with all those bowls?" Right? And
Yeah.
so this one woman was like, "I think they're doggy dishes." And like another one was like, "Yeah, I think they're dog dishes." So the beautiful thing about that is when you take these practices to the people and
Yeah.
you don't have like a whole bunch of judgment, like you can have beautiful opportunities to share. And I was like, if
Yeah.
they're doggy dishes, they're the most expensive the history of, like, I mean, I know people got like Chihuahua sweaters and all these other things, but
Yeah.
these are not dog dishes. And so I was able to share with them like what sacred sound is like, and
Yeah.
I use these bowls for. So I want to end this time with us together with one
Mm.
non-doggy dishes. So pre-clearing,
Yeah.
like I'll hit this 3 times and then we'll
Mm.
just go on with our beautiful day. Brother Danny,
Mm.
thank you so much for your
Thank
heart,
you.
for your work, for your smile, for your sun-kissed radiance, and just for the gift that you are to all of us. So know that like this, like I only got one shot to like give all love from myself and the collective to you.
Mm.
So here it is. So like
Thank you.
you
Thank
you
you.
are enough, you are fantastic, you are seen, you are appreciated. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cool. So for those of you that are with us, find your tall spine. Maybe shrug the shoulders a bit to just get a little bit more loose there. Open and close the jaw. And let's just reflect on the beauty of the conversation that we had. Heartfelt sharing from 2 Black identified men in a world that seeks to demean and destroy.
Mm.
We shared nothing but love, peace, and grace here. So let's go in that spirit. 3 closing breaths, and then I'll ring the bell. Inhale through the nose. Exhale out the mouth. Inhale through the nose. Exhale out the mouth. Last, in through the nose. Exhale out the mouth. Love, grace, and peace to all. Blessings and best wishes. Ashe.
Thank you. Thank you, bro. Thank you, brother.
Om Shanti.